Hello, my brilliant Sussex squadron. Buckle up, pour yourself a cup of something warm and comforting, and let's set the record straight. Because today, the hypocrisy is boiling over. The experts are clutching their pearls so hard I fear they may leave permanent dents. And the Royal ROTA's carefully plotted 6-month plan to take down Harry and Meghan Sussex has just been blown to smithereens by one very inconvenient truth. Netflix isn't just sticking with them, it's doubling down. Yes, you heard me right. The same Harry and Meghan Sussex who were, according to these so-called insiders, done for in Hollywood, frozen out of streaming and abandoned by every major platform, have just signed off on an extended Netflix deal that will see multiple projects, multiple seasons, and more original content on the way. And oh, my dear squadron, the meltdown from certain quarters could power the entire UK through winter without a single wind turbine. But this isn't just about one deal. No. This is about the sheer pettiness, the envy, and the desperation that have been bubbling away ever since Harry and Meghan Sussex dared to outshine the Windsors during that 2018 Australia tour. A tour so wildly successful that it triggered what I can only describe as a royal PR apocalypse. It was from that moment that a decision seems to have been made in the shadows. These two must be cut down to size. And so began the smears, the endless anonymous palace sources, the cartoon villain headlines. The royal experts, a term I use loosely enough to drive a double-decker bus through, began their slow, relentless campaign. And yet years later, here we are. Harry and Meghan Sussex are thriving, independent, and making content that is both commercially viable and deeply human. The UK tabloids, still stuck in their Groundhog Day of bitterness. So, let's dive in. We're going to unpack how this so-called 6-month plan against Harry and Meghan Sussex was supposed to work, why it has failed so spectacularly, and how the Netflix deal has sent the Royal ROTA into full public tantrum mode. And yes, we're naming names. The 6-month plan exposed. Let's be clear, the Royal ROTA doesn't work like normal journalism. This isn't about facts, investigations, or balanced reporting. This is about narrative control. Deciding which royals get glowing puff pieces and which ones get the sources, say their difficult treatment. When it comes to Harry and Meghan Sussex, the goal has been consistent: undermine, discredit, and exhaust them until they fade from public life entirely. According to multiple whispers in media circles, and you don't have to be Hercule Poirot to spot the patterns, the 6-month plan was built on 3 pillars: predicted failure. Push the idea that Harry and Meghan Sussex's Netflix deal was doomed from the start. Paint every project as a flop before it even aired. If something did well, ignore it or pretend it was a one-off. Character assassination. Keep rehashing the "they're difficult to work with" trope, even though actual colleagues, from directors to production staff, say otherwise. Royal contrast marketing. Pump out glowing features on William and Kate, framing them as hard-working and modern by default, despite their well-documented light workload. The problem for the ROTA is that reality has an inconvenient habit of intruding. Harry and Meghan Sussex's projects have been watched. Their names do draw audiences, and while William and Kate might photograph well in a field or next to a tree they're pretending to plant, they simply don't generate the same global engagement. The meltdown after the Netflix extension. Enter Peter Ford and his ilk. Oh my dear squadron, if bitterness were a currency, Peter could single-handedly solve the cost of living crisis. This is a man who spent months, confidently predicting that Netflix would never, under any circumstances, renew its deal with the Sussexes. He wasn't alone, of course. Royal talking heads lined up to echo the claim, all smirks and smug certainty. And now, the Netflix renewal has landed like a wet kipper across their collective faces. Not only are Harry and Meghan Sussex staying put, they're expanding. We've got season 2 of With Love, Meghan Sussex, a heartwarming holiday special, and a documentary on the incredible Masaka kids. These are projects with real substance. Projects that combine entertainment with meaningful storytelling. The reaction from the ROTA has been nothing short of comedic. First came the denial. It's probably a smaller deal this time. Then came the backpedaling. Well, maybe Netflix just feels sorry for them. And now, we've arrived at the petty stage attempts to downplay or mock the subject matter itself. Because nothing screams serious journalism quite like ridiculing a project that uplifts African children through music and dance. Alright, so, if we go back to 2018, the seeds of this animosity are glaringly obvious. Harry and Meghan Sussex went on their first major overseas tour to Australia, Fiji, Tonga, and New Zealand. Crowds turned out in the tens of thousands. The media coverage was glowing, the public response was electric, and the couple's ability to connect, genuinely connect, with people was undeniable. For the royal institution, this should have been a win for the team, but instead, it exposed a painful truth. Not all royals are created equal in terms of charisma. William and Kate, while perfectly pleasant, simply couldn't match that level of warmth and magnetism. And rather than learn from Harry and Meghan Sussex's example, the response from Palace PR seemed to be, "Dim their light so ours looks brighter." And thus, the ROTA's tone began to shift. The glowing headlines gave way to ominous insider leaks. Stories about Meghan Sussex's work ethic were twisted into Meghan Sussex is difficult. Coverage of Harry's mental health advocacy became Harry is fragile and angry. The Australia tour went from wild success to beginning of trouble in record time. Now, the biggest flaw in the ROTA's strategy is that it relies on control. And honestly, control evaporated the moment Harry and Meghan Sussex stepped outside the UK media bubble. In America, they aren't bound by the Royal ROTA's handshake agreements. They can choose their own projects, release their own statements, and partner with platforms that operate on global rather than tabloid timelines. Netflix isn't the Daily Mail. They care about viewership, not palace politics. If a project draws eyes and subscriptions, it's a win, regardless of what some ex-royal correspondent mutters on breakfast television. And Harry and Meghan Sussex's track record shows they can deliver both attention and impact. Moreover, the Sussexes are playing the long game. While the ROTA obsesses over week-to-week tabloid fodder, Harry and Meghan Sussex are building a portfolio of content that will still be watchable and relevant years from now. Every time Harry and Meghan Sussex succeed, a certain segment of the UK press seems to go through the 5 stages of grief. And let's be real, they never make it past anger. We've seen this movie before. Spotify deal announced? Smears. Harry and Meghan Sussex documentary breaks Netflix viewership records? Smears. Meghan Sussex's Archetypes podcast wins awards? Smears. Now, with the Netflix extension, the pattern repeats. Expect to see an uptick in stories about palace concerns, strained family ties, and the old favourite, Americans losing interest, except the numbers don't bear that out. So, my lovely Sussex squadron, what have we learned? We've learned that a 6-month plan built on bitterness collapses the moment it meets reality. We've learned that Harry and Meghan Sussex, despite years of calculated smear campaigns, are still commanding the kind of global attention and creative freedom that others in the royal fold can only dream of. And we've learned that when it comes to the royal ROTA, nothing stings quite like watching the people you tried to destroy not only survive, but thrive. Here's the truth the ROTA doesn't want to admit. Harry and Meghan Sussex don't need the UK media, the palace PR machine, or the royal ROTA's approval to succeed. They have their own lane, their own voice, and their own audience. And that audience isn't going anywhere. So the next time you see Peter Ford or his friends on TV, eyes narrowed, lips pursed, desperately trying to explain why the Netflix deal doesn't really mean anything, remember this. Their outrage isn't about Harry and Meghan Sussex failing. It's about Harry and Meghan Sussex refusing to fail. And as long as they keep creating, connecting, and carving their own path, the tantrums will keep coming. And we'll be right here, tea in hand, watching the whole delicious spectacle unfold.